UFC lightweight contender Dan Hooker has always been a fan favourite. Of that there can be no doubt. But on this recent run, a run that includes his instant classic against Dustin Poirier, and his most recent display of total badassery in crossing the world, making weight, and winning in dominant fashion against Nasrat Haqparast, I think it's fair to say that the levels of love we have for the Hangman are positively through the roof. And the dude just seems like a nice guy in general, but inside that octagon, while indeed he's got that warrior spirit, he also has that technical skill in his locker, as evidenced by his mature performance against Haqparast. As far as I see it, Nasrat is still one of the most interesting prospects at 155 pounds right now. He might have 8 UFC fights under his belt with a mixed bag of results, but he's still only 26 years old. And in losing to Marcin Held, Drew Dober, and most recently Hooker, it's not like he's losing to nobodies. But Dan Hooker went in there and thoroughly dominated the contest, keeping his high ranking within the stacked 155-pound title picture, and doing enough to ensure that he would get a high-level opponent in his next outing. And that ordeal, as far as the travelling and weight cutting that both he and Haqparast went through to make that fight at UFC 266 happen, deserves to be held in the highest of regard, especially with Nasrat Haqparast having lost his mother in the weeks that led up to the fight. They both showed up and they did their job, and they should be commended for that. And after watching Hooker return in such impressive fashion, I in many ways was surprised because of the year that preceded it. His 5-round war with Dustin Poirier and that brutal knockout he sustained at the hands of the debuting Michael Chandler. And Dan Hooker looked kind of flat in that second outing, taking too much time to get going before Chandler eventually moved in with that bomb of a right hand to shut his lights out. And for me at the time, in the lead up to the Haqparast fight, I really did wonder at how he would look after that pair of defeats. I don't need to tell you that a war and a vicious first round knockout can be enough to change a fighter. And though Chandler deserves all of the credit in the world for landing that shot, my main takeaway from that bout was that Hooker didn't look that good. So naturally coming into this one, given that Dan has always been someone that I liked and supported, I was kind of relieved to see him bounce back in such impressive fashion. And when that final bell went and the victory was given, there was an outpouring of appreciation for this former featherweight and now lightweight veteran. And after all of that, the pre-fight complications and then overcoming the dip in form, I don't think anybody would have held it against Hooker if he wanted to take some time to regroup. But no, this absolute madman just signed to replace the former lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos in his UFC 267 matchup against Islam Makhachev, taking the fight on just over 1 month's worth of notice. And that, along with all the other things he has done in the last year or so, is only serving to further his reputation as one of the most game fighters in the sport. And it's a great move for Hooker, as far as building on your excellent work is concerned. Problem? Well, he has to take on Islam Makhachev, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is not the type of matchup you want to go into underprepared. Not to say that Hooker and his team will fail to do so, but it's one hell of a challenge to undertake. On a side note, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel now to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads, before leaving a comment to let YouTube's algorithms know that we are fast becoming one of the best MMA channels on the platform. Obviously, while there are risks, the upside is absolutely huge here. Makhachev is one of the most interesting rising talents in the sport, a watertight technician whose ties to the former champion Khabib Nurmagomedov have left some fans in a state of complete certainty about his place as the eventual successor to the Eagles' era of dominance. But Islam is his own fighter. He's not the relentless force of nature that Nurmagomedov was, instead bringing a slightly more methodical approach and a tighter stand-up game when compared to the admittedly highly effective marauding pressure style of his teammate. And I too believe that championship bouts are in the future for Makhachev. He's already proven to be able to dominate to such an extent that it would suggest that he's more than ready for a top 5 test. And though Hooker falls just outside of that bracket, I'd imagine that a win for him would leave him just one fight away from a title shot. But let us not forget that Hooker without question represents the toughest test of Islam's career up until this point. And his team at City Kickboxing, those incredible trailblazers that just keep on getting better and better, they're going to bring their fighter to the octagon with the best possible route to victory in hand. And though Makhachev's talent is clear, I do think that there are questions that still hang over him, challenges that have yet to be overcome, obviously, given that he has just cracked the top 10. And it's not a dig at Islam, but more so a comment on how his levels of hype have grown past the weight of what he has proven. And as I've said in the past, this guy was as avoided as they come during his initial rise, and with good reason. But I think that this matchup, the fight with Hooker, is a far better and more interesting test than his originally scheduled bout with Poirier. I think Hooker, as a stylistic counter to Makhachev, brings a lot more in the way of unknowns to the table. And after years of waiting to see this prospect hit these levels, I'm just happy to see that he's finally right there in the thick of it. As for how I think it might play out, I don't know if Hooker necessarily has the power to keep Islam off of him, because while I do believe that there are certainly ways to exploit Makhachev's stand-up, I do think that it will take a certain type of striker to do so, because otherwise there's not too much in the way of holes in his approach. And over the course of the 3 scheduled rounds, I would imagine that Islam will have too much for his opponent, and I just can't see Dan stopping those takedowns. So I'm going to go with a unanimous decision for Islam Makhachev. Again, I think it's a harder fight than Rafael dos Anjos, but I'm definitely unsure of whether Hooker has the tools needed to stop Islam from doing what Islam does. But do you think that Dan Hooker's almighty risk will pay dividends? Or will it be the technical mastery of Islam Makhachev that sees him continue his run of form? Do let us know your opinions in the comments section below. We always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.